Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Across the Park podcast. Myself, Judgy, joined by the one and only Stan Collymore. Delighted to have you, Stan. How are you doing?
Do you have many Reds on?
Well, not these days, mate. We used to be a red and a blue podcast, actually, but since we've split from the Reds, it's been a while since we had a staunch red like yourself on. So, welcome anyway, Stan. It's good to have you.
Thank you very much. Actually, I'm a staunch Villa fan, and the reason why I've got such a soft spot for Everton, do you know, on Twitter in the last 4 or 5 years, when they've had the Twitter Spaces at the top of your feed where you can join audio, which is great. I used to like live streaming. You could just go straight into live video. And the only space that I've ever joined and put my hand up to take part in is an Everton one. And that's because as a kid growing up, I'm a football geek. I'm a massive English football geek. I think that people think that when you play, particularly when they see modern players, you know, there's a lot of players that just play football because they were good at football. But, you know, going back as a kid, I love English football. I love the heritage of the founding members. Your club is a founding member. My club is a founding member. So from that perspective, and then going through a football career where I could have nearly joined Everton, and it was like that. It was really
Don't I know it, Stan.
Cigarette paper between Liverpool and Everton, and the way that Everton conducted their business. I had to say at the time, Joe Royle. I saw his lad actually that's now involved at Oldham, and I said, "How's your dad?" And talked about family and stuff. And in terms of Everton and the way that they do things traditionally has always been first class, treat supporters right, listen to supporters, and have a competitive football team on the pitch. And unfortunately, I know we'll come to what's happened recently. I've seen the vote of no confidence this evening, and I think it's about 7,500 people have voted on that out of 10,000. I went a lot as a broadcaster, a lot to Goodison Park for TalkSport and for other radio stations, and was always treated very well by Bill. But I also did lots of radio shows that was critical of Everton as a football club and what Everton Football Club were doing, and obviously not listening to their supporter base. And I think that it's got to the point now where, you know, the media as well as I do, is that once a club gives a statement, people automatically now take that as fact, wherever it's come from, as long as it's official. People in, whether it be at Sky, whether it be at radio stations, whether it be other television stations, swallow it as fact. And we don't ask enough questions as broadcast media. I try to, but it becomes very difficult at times because the narratives become very entrenched very quickly about the headlock, the fan behaviour, etc. And so I have a really healthy interest in Everton Football Club. It's a club that should always be in the top flight. It should always be competing, and in a great city of Liverpool that has 2 wonderful football clubs, should always be setting the bar for how English football, not just football in the city, conducts itself and competes. So delighted to be joining you, and strange times I know at Goodison. But I think there's a real opportunity now for supporters to unite, which sometimes the other lot across the road do quite well, and other supporters groups do quite well, and push their own narrative and stay strong and get change. Because an Everton that is mid-table or fighting relegation for year after year after year should never really be happening. Every club has a crap season or two. Villa had very similar problems to Everton about a decade ago, and we had to go down into the Championship and dust ourselves off and go through lots of owners before getting owners that are very good, generally speaking. So I hope that Everton can get that, but it's going to be a path of unifying, media people asking the right questions and delving more into the football club, and I think you'll get there.
Yeah, listen, Stan, so much of what you said there, I want to touch on. I've made a few notes of it, and you know, cheers for your opening piece there, because and especially for how passionate you were about, you know, what we represent as fans, and I think you've touched on some really poignant messages there. I just want to take you back briefly, because, you know, we are, as I say, we are an Everton fan podcast, and me personally, I was born in 1985. I was 10 years of age, sorry, when the move from Nottingham Forest to one of the Merseyside clubs was mooted. I was told reliably by a lot of people that you'd sign for Everton, that was done. It was a done deal. I was in the souvenir shop, and I tell no lies, I was in the souvenir shop with my Everton shirt with nothing on the back, demanding Collymore on it. That's how close I was. And the reason, I'm not joking, mate, I was going to football training. I was going to football training that night, and I had my shirt ready, and the news came in that you'd signed for Liverpool. Now, you touched on it then, the fact that you felt that the club were classy in the way that they dealt with things, and Joe Royle and the owners. Just talk us through that short period of how you nearly came to sign for Everton, but eventually signed for Liverpool.
Yeah, I've got to be honest, the only thing that swayed me in Liverpool's direction was, I mean, it's Liverpool, and I know that if you're an Evertonian, you say, well, you know, Liverpool and they're the neighbours and stuff, and, you know, don't blow too much smoke up their arse kind of thing. But obviously, but as a kid growing up, my allegiance was to Aston Villa. Used to go as a kid. Sister used to take me as a kid. But obviously was super aware of sort of regions of the country that had, you know, it just bled football, and Liverpool was the sort of preeminent. So I remember having a really good season at Nottingham Forest. I think I'd scored 25 goals in my first season, 25 in my second. And Liverpool made an offer, I think that, I don't know, it was straight £8.5 million as it was then. Somebody actually did this sort of, for inflation change what it would be today, and it's about 170 million. And Everton offered the same. And so I went down, my agent was Paul Stretford, that of course had Wayne Rooney, still has Wayne Rooney. Sure. For a long, he's had Wayne Rooney pretty much all the way through his career, by the early part. And we went down to a hotel in Heathrow to meet Roy Evans, who I felt sorry for him really. He flew all the way back from, I don't know if it was Barbados or Jamaica on holiday.
Sounds like Roy, yeah.
Yeah, he'd only been there 2 days, not thinking this deal wasn't going to get done. So Roy comes back, I meet him in a hotel room, and he said, we want you to come, it's Liverpool, etc., etc. And then I went straight up north, and so I think it's called a hotel in Mere, which is a sort of Manchester stockbroker belt. I think it's called Mere Park or something like that.
Yeah.
And I met Joe there, and Joe Royle, perhaps along with Trevor Francis, are the two most impressive men I've ever met in the game, and I've met them all. He spoke with so much pride about the club. It was tangible. I mean, Roy had obviously been through the boot room, and he took the reserves when Liverpool were winning Central League titles, running parallel to the first team winning top division titles. So he knew Liverpool inside out. But the way that Joe spoke about Everton, and his humour and his candour, and of course he was a striker, so he said, look, I want to pair you with Big Dunk, and that would have been a really good partnership. I had a really good partnership with Robbie Fowler, but I think it would have been equally as good with Big Dunk. And it just came down to the fact that about 4 months previous, I'd been called up to an England squad. There was due to be an England game, I think, against Colombia or Mexico. And it got called off, but Terry Venables decided to bring the squad together anyway. And he said, instead of bringing together all of the big, the Beardsleys and David Platts that were still England internationals at that point, he wanted a younger squad and to see what they could do, because it was a year out from Euro 96. So he just wanted to look at his options. So there was Jamie Redknapp, there was Fowler, there was McManaman, David James. And it was just hanging around with them really that made the difference. It was kind of like just, you know, knowing
sounds like a laugh to me.
Yeah, and it was a laugh at times, trust me. But the fact that I knew them was the deal breaker. I knew I could have gone to Everton, and I knew that I could have, you know, I think that between Fowler and I over 2 seasons, I think it was 102 goals. And
that was stupid, yeah.
So ridiculous amount of assists as well. But there was nothing to pick from a football perspective. It was primarily at that stage I knew Jamie Redknapp really well, and that's why I signed. But I remember having a dream when I was about 15, and I was thinking about this today when I knew I was coming on, and I was in the gym and I'd done my run. I did my running every day, try and keep fit. And when I was 15, I had a dream, a really vivid dream that I joined Everton. So when I spoke to Joe, it was like, this is a bit of fate. Joe did everything he possibly could. And, you know, it was the kind of the Dogs of War team, but he wanted to change it as well. He wanted to have more nuance, and he wanted to bring in different types of players. And they offered, this is going to sound hard to believe now in football generally with the top 6 and then the other clubs, but Everton offered double what I was on at Liverpool, double straight off the bat. And I was like, whoa. And Stretford went, don't make any decisions about money, make a decision purely on football. And it was just Redknapp and knowing the lads. So it was very, very close. And like I say, Joe Royle was the epitome of what you want from one of your heroes. Like Trevor, I grew up watching in the Midlands, it's called Star Soccer. I don't know what it was called in Merseyside, but you'd have a Sunday game on, and it'd be Villa against Wolves or Birmingham against Villa or Coventry. Yeah. So you'd have regional top flight games. Yeah. And I was, you know, Trevor Francis was a big, he played for Birmingham and then for Nottingham Forest, of course. But Trevor Francis and Joe Royle stuck out for me as 2 men that were everything you'd expect about your heroes and your idols.
I mean, that's the following season, if I'm not mistaken, as well. We had Andrew Kanchelskis in there, and I think it was probably your first Anfield derby when Kanchelskis gets 2, and we win the game. And I mean, that's it. We had a great season that season. I'm thinking Collymore in there. Wow, what a season that would have been for us. It would have put us into that probably top 4 or 5 bracket.
Yeah, I remember a derby at Goodison, and I hit the crossbar. I beat Nev, who I ended up being teammates with at Bradford later on in my career, and I follow him on Twitter, and he does amazing stuff with sort of opening people's eyes to lots of different issues. Absolutely love Nev. And the ball came back to me. It was a sodden pitch. It was tipping down with rain. We were 1-0 down, and I hit the crossbar. And then late on, Roy said, as often he did, go out on the left wing and put some crosses in. And I got the ball about 10 yards into the Everton half on the touchline, right in front of the dugouts. And I whipped this. I thought, I'm just going to put it into an area, and I know that he's going to be there. And Fowler just sticks out, literally a toe, and it's a late. I mean, obviously after that, I went back many times, and I was commentating on derbies, and it was one-way traffic for a lot of the 2 seasons. But they were really competitive games, and so it's hard to say to put, you know, when people say, well, you've played in, you know, I was at Crystal Palace as a youngster, played debut as Palace against QPR, which I know is not a proper London derby. Played Bradford Leeds in a Premier League game, big West Midlands derbies, but the Merseyside derby, I just remember it just being mad because the pace of the game. I remember Unzi, that was a teammate of mine. He was a teammate, but this is a mad story, but I was at Villa and we were playing Wickham, and all of a sudden David Unsworth comes in the dressing room and he's just signed, and he signed for Villa, played in the game, and then went to Everton. He was there. I think he was there for about a week.
It was about. I think it was a little bit longer than that, but it wasn't much longer. It was a strange.
Just walked through the door and say hello, and then he walked back and was like goodbye. But it was just bizarre. He was a teammate for. And then I dealt with him for a little bit in the sort of role that I've got at Southend when he was still at the club, under 21 players and under 23 players. But I remember him giving it me loads. And the first ball in the channel, he gave me it, and the Goodison went, and it was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Referee, I know that referees going back to some sensible rules on tackling and challenging and physicality, because I think that it's part of our game, and I think it's an important part of our game. So they've gone back a little bit to players being able to put challenges in after this sort of nightmare of diving and cheating and rolling over for a decade or more. But yeah, those derbies were something else. And like I say, Everton were competitive in them.
Well, listen, I'm not. Obviously, we're not here to talk about your whole career. I wanted to touch on that in particular because it's got a personal, poignant, feeling to me. But let's touch on the current climate as we are now. As I would say, it was something. I appreciate you reaching out to us on Twitter. We've done a lot of pieces and different podcasts with the fan advisory group who the Everton board brought in to try and bring, apparently the fans closer to the board and to try and get the board's message across. We spoke to the All Together Now guys as well about what they're trying to do and the current issues on their side. I mean, it's bizarre, as you pointed out before, and as you mentioned, the PR from the club has been nothing short of, gobs. It's been incredible. I mean, I come into the game on Saturday, which, as you know, and as every Evertonian knows, and Southampton fan knows, it was a huge game for Everton on Saturday. To turn up at the ground 3 hours before the game and to see that statement all over Sky Sports News that, Everton putting it out as a club had told the board not to turn up, and that was something that the club were putting out. It's a bit of a shock at first, this thing, and how bad has it got? How bad have the threats been? But to put it out, so just before that game, just talk to me about your feelings about that at the time and now.
I think a lot of pundits talk, and what I love about punditry is that, or analysis, sports broadcasting, whatever you want to call it, a mixture of all of them, is to kind of do your homework. If somebody asks you on a radio station or a TV station, tell us about what you know about Everton and the board, they'll know Bill Kenwright's been there for a long time. They know there's been a situation with Fayed Mashiri. They know the club's moving to a new stadium, and they know that Frank Lampard, it's not happening on the pitch. But having genuinely followed, and I followed with interest, because you're talking about, you look at the Gillette and Hicks situation, how that ended across the road. Aston Villa, my club, had Randy Lerner, did all of his money very quickly and then ran out of money. So 3-6 positions and looking at developing the club, the stadium, never happened. We never kicked on. Fans can accept lots of things. They can accept boards that make mistakes. They can accept teams not winning football matches. They like their passion. They like the team, ideally, to have some of them. I would give my right arm to play for insert club. I want you to do the same. And I understand all of that. But I think that when you get to a position where seemingly clubs are going out of their way, and many have done it. This isn't just about Everton. And one of the big bugbears for me that I love debating about is the fact that a fit and proper persons test in the game that has some moral aspects, obligations, as well as financial obligations, is really important. And it's really important because we all get really blindsided by the latest billionaires that come in and buy our club and go, great, they're going to take us to the new stadium, that's going to ram the place out, we're going to be able to buy all the players that we want. And we as fans are quite fickle, all of us, in terms of sometimes we'll swallow and hold our nose as long as we get something or we seem to be progressing. Man City fans did it, Chelsea with Abramovich and now Bowley. You're seeing the Geordies that got very, very prickly when people were starting to talk about human rights abuses. The club have been very clever in building an earthy, underwhelming squad and team from what we were expecting to do. But some owners are clever and some are not. And I've been to Everton so many times and seen Bill coming down the stairs from the commentary box. He's like, "All right, Stan, how are you?" And Jenny. And he's always been very gracious to me. But I know when Brian Dugan was there, who was the head of media at Aston Villa, then he went to Everton. I looked through a DM that I got the other day and invited onto the sleep out, the mental health sleep out that Everton in the community did. I'm the biggest fan of Everton in the community, and I went to Finch Farm when Gareth Barry was there, had a chat with him and had a look around. So I'm a big Everton fan of the institution that is Everton Football Club. It's when people own a football club, particularly of that size, particularly of that history. I've gone on record many times saying that the founder members should be protected in law as special assets of national value.
Heritage, isn't it? Yeah.
We've given the Premier League the world. We've taken players all over, and it's been. I'm going to Paris at the weekend to do a full weekend for Canal Plus. Who's the French broadcaster? Olivier Decour's my. He'll be one of the co-presenters. He's fantastic, love him to bits, and he's got very fond things to say about Everton. Is that the founder members starting, but the pyramid should be protected better than it is. We all agree with that. Now, if you then crunch it down and go to Bill, I think it's time that Bill went. And I think it's time that Bill went because if you are looking at working in any business that has key performance indicators, in other words, what's your success ratio? Bill's success ratio is non-existent. You can't keep selling this, I'm a fan and I'm the best custodian and I'm the best steward of the club that the club could possibly have. Because if you're the final person in the room saying it, then perhaps it's not true. Yeah. And like I say, Bill has always been I've never been given any special treatment going to Goodison, but when I see him, and it's usually at half time, come down from doing a commentary, go in the loo, Bill's there, all right, Stan, how you doing? Or going up the stairs. And so I think that Bill now, if he took a step back and looked at going back the last 10, 15 years, they've not been good years for Everton at all. There's been plenty of what could be termed as fallow years and hiring and firing and taking wrong turns, going way before Moshiri came to the club.
So Stan, can I just stop you at that point? Because as you said, you've had a lot of interactions with Bill, you know, and you've seen him, you know, more than enough about the modern history of the club and about Bill's position within that. And I'm asking you this question not as a matter of fact, but as your opinion. What is it? Is it vanity? Is perceived love for the club? Is it the fact that unfortunately for him and everyone gets to that position? Is he got that old that he's kind of got stubborn in his ways? What is it for you?
I think that when you're in a boardroom and you've been at a club for a long time and you're a totem and you're a very visible totem of the club and he's smiling and he cares. There's no doubt he cares.
Yeah.
But I've met dozens of owners. I like somebody like Matthew Benham at Brentford that has a very different take on the game, and he employs people that don't just say yes to him.
And so, that's a key. That's a key. Yeah.
So it's no surprise that Brentford have been a club where everybody questions each other and pushes each other, tests each other, and you start to get forward momentum and progress with that.
Sure.
And I've also sat down and interviewed chairmen and owners that have been at clubs for a long time. And excuse my French, but they almost all say the same thing. And it's, this club wouldn't be the effing same without me being there. I'm the only one that cares. I'm the only one that can take, and they believe it. I'm not saying Bill's deluded. I'm not saying he's been there so long. And every single employee, if you think about it, more or less, there can't be many at the club, even stewards and the old fella that does the tea and this, that have outlived him in terms of how long he's been there.
Yeah.
But I think that you come in as a new owner and you have a 5-year plan. When I went on that space, the Everton space, I said 18 months ago, maybe 12 months ago it was. And I said, and they came on and they said, what do you think? I said, everybody's got to get round a table. Everybody's got to decide what the 5-year plan is. And you've got to stick to it and you've got to adhere to it. Look at Arsenal. what they've done, for example. They've got a plan, and despite 2 wins in whatever it was, Arteta's a spell of games that were horrific, they stuck with it. And I think that you can have a clear plan and a clear identity with what you want to be as a club off the pitch, that it's much easier to do that on the pitch. And I look at Everton, I'm like, where's the direction? Where's the communication with supporters? I think there was a situation where AGMs didn't happen for several years. That's
a couple of years ago.
When you start to not communicate with your supporter base, then you have a major issue, because it's much easier for all of your fan groups to be able to take a step back and say, we don't know what's going on in the club. Nobody's coming out and telling us anything. Bill's briefing his mates, and I don't necessarily think he's that. I know he's got mates in the media, but certainly from the people that I know, I don't think anybody outside the city of Liverpool is parroting a line for Bill, but they hear Denise was in a headlock, but directors have been told not to come, and they report it, and then you get your pundits involved that are not particularly the brightest in some cases, and they parrot the official party line. So that's when it starts to stick, and you have Ian Wright, loving to bits, that said, I know somebody that knows Bill, and this was real, and what happened with Denise and what have you. And then I'm seeing Everton fans on social going, let's make an appeal for the person to find this person. We want them found, because we're all being tarred with the same brush here.
Same brush, yeah.
Nothing's been forthcoming. And then Wrighty, to his credit, goes, I'll hold my hand up, Evertonians. That was wrong. But I think that where somebody like me would look at it is, and that's why I sent you the message on Twitter before, most pundits had their say and got their teeth into it on shows and programmes, that I would go to bat for Evertonians, because I've watched how they've behaved over a number of years, how they've turned up in their numbers, how they've supported the team in numbers, how their good humour as a big club that's watched the 2 Manchester Giants sail off into the sunset, across Stanley Park into the sunset. Clubs like Villa have got money now. Newcastle United have got money. And that's without the likes of Brentford and forwardly progressive clubs like that. And they have taken enough. They have asked enough questions that have not been answered routinely by Bill and the board, in my opinion. And I think that the end game is a unified supporters base with the supporters group that you just mentioned, and Bill to resign his post, and somebody more dynamic, somebody with more of a vision, somebody that's more relevant in running a football club, a modern football club today, will then all of a sudden make Everton a much more attractive prospect, either for a potential new buyer or buyers, because it's one of England's biggest and most decorated football clubs. So it does start with Bill. I've always had really cordial, very brief, how are you, Stan? I'm all right, thanks, Bill, how are you? And Jenny always follows him down the steps. And, on a personal note, I used to love Judge John Deed with her and Martin Shaw. I know it sounds mad. So I want respect for them and what Bill's done in the theatre world. But I think as a relevant part of a huge potential
business as well. It's a business, Stan, isn't it?
But football club of size, I don't think Bill should be anywhere near Everton Football Club right now, if I'm being honest. And it's sad to say, because there would have been people over the years that would have gone, bloody hell, when you've been here that long and it is your club and you've been coming since you were a little boy and what have you, then it's sad. But look how many legends there have been of football clubs that have managed the club that they were famous, Glenn Hoddle, or any number of managers that have managed their club, and they've been run out of town for a number of poor results. So I don't know why Bill should feel any special dispensation, because he's been there for so long.
Yeah, one of whom, club legend you mentioned there's been caught in the crossfire, so to speak, and he's on the board, is Graeme Sharp. I mean, I don't know how well you know Graeme, but I mean, it's a really awkward position for the Evertonians, because there couldn't be more of a club legend who's alive than Graeme Sharp. He's been silent. He has been silent. There's been no word from him directly. I understand why, because he's on the board. But let me just ask you this, Stan. I don't think it's a tough question for a fan, as you are at Villa. If you were in that position at Villa, you're sitting on the board and you're under that level of scrutiny, you're in Graeme Sharp's position, what would be your, let's forget about the legal side of it, if I can't say this and I can't say that. What would be your reaction to this?
Well, on a much smaller level at Southend, where I'm involved, we've got an owner of long standing, and the club have had issues. We're in an embargo at the moment, and that's happened a number of times with HMRC over a number of years. And the club were failing, went from League One to the National League, and we're due to go into a new 20,000 seat stadium in a couple of years' time. And I said I want to help, but one of the first things I didn't have a CEO, so I helped bring our CEO in, who's a Southend fan, brought in a new managerial team, and the aim was to have a monthly supporters meeting, because you've got to connect with the supporters. Supporters were getting on the pitch, stopped a game, and that's untenable. So in my position, and I'd like to think that whatever club, if this was Villa, if this was Everton, I think you have to come out and speak out, because otherwise you get this. Remember, like sort of MUTV, when Roy Keane came out and spoke, and he was he was very critical about the club and the structure. Is that club channels, LFC TV, MUTV, Everton TV, Villa TV, they become platforms, and people see them as like Pravda. It's the sort of state propaganda, if you like.
Yeah.
And I think that it's very easy to get ex-players, former legends, that get roped up into that. I would say to Graeme is that if you're at the club and you believe you're going to be at the club for a longer term, again, I always used to see him at games just hovering around the press box, and he's a ledge, is that there will be, you can't disclose things, otherwise you're going to effectively lose your job. So he can't just wake up tomorrow and go, I'm going to come on the podcast and tell you everything.
Sure.
I would be guessing that there would be people on the board that are very unhappy with what's happened. And I think that for an ex-player that loves the club, has had glory years at the club, that's fulfilled plenty of roles at the club, ambassador, you name it.
Sure.
It'll be difficult for him to bite his lip. But what do Evertonians want? For him to say, right, I'm going to give up my job. I'm going to walk out. I'm now not going to be inside the tent. I'm just going to be ranting outside the tent. Or a more diplomatic way to be would be, let's see what develops in the short term. I know Evertonians aren't happy. I feel they're distressing their pain, but I'm going to stay in the tent because I can make more things happen than not by doing that. And I think that is that when you get ex-players, ex-managers that are brought back and been on the board, they get so disrespected because everybody thinks they're a patsy, when what they want to do is make changes for the better. Yeah. So I would say, be patient with him. And I'm sure that if we believe it is a truism that maybe people are being briefed at times to be protest by supporters, that I would be flabbergasted that people in the club and on the board that really do, and I'm not saying Bill doesn't have the club's best interest, I just think his time has come to an end, is that there will be people on the board that are more than willing to be telling people what's going on and what's what and what the potential, and trying to move things to a satisfactory conclusion behind the scenes. But I don't think he could just wake up tomorrow and say, everybody meet me at Goodison, I've had enough, here's the laundry list of things that the club are doing wrong, because he loses his job. He has no influence then within the football club whatsoever. And I think that more so than now, supporters need a voice on the board. And I think Sharpie is a clever bloke. He knows what he can say and he knows what he can't say. But I would be absolutely flabbergasted that he's not saying something pertinent, something relative in board meetings.
No, fair enough, and that's a really relevant take, because you've obviously been on both sides there, and I appreciate that. And by the way, and this is going to go out, I'm not suggesting, by the way, that the fans are turning on Sharpie in any way, shape, or form, but it's just a really, it's just a really difficult one for us as fans, because I don't think for a second that we ever would turn on Sharpie, and it would take a lot for us to do that. but it's difficult to know that someone of your own is there, and as you put it there, is finding it difficult to really get their message across. Let me ask you another one, because
just quickly dive in. So this Greg O'Keefe got a lot of stick, and of course, when you're a journalist, you are. Well, I've seen this with Villa journalists around. First, we had Randy Lerner. There was not a lot of information coming out about the club, and then we had an owner called Dr. Jie from China, and he was, for want of a better phrase, should never have been a fit and proper person to manage to look after and run Aston Villa. And so we're all honing in on the local guy. There are 2 or 3 in the Birmingham Evening Mail, and it's very difficult for them because they go too hard on the club, and they're going to
get access,
get banned, access remote. And that is more difficult than ever now. News organisations don't get any special favours like they did in the days when you'd have 3 local blokes there and nobody else would take it. But I saw a couple of Greg's tweets, and then I saw some of the sort of the stuff from Evertonians, and he said, "Look, I can take the barbs, I can take the criticism, but can we not make it personal?" I'll ask you: do you feel that the Echo, in particular, is doing a good job to represent the discontent and upset of Everton supporters? And do you feel that Greg and his colleagues, the Athletic done pieces and what have you, are doing a service in terms of giving an accurate reflection of what's happening at Everton Football Club?
Absolutely not. I mean, we can't underestimate. It would be foolish of us to underestimate the influence here of Dave Prentice, who, Greg O'Keefe was the apprentice of Dave Prentice, and the very close. Dave Prentice was brought into the club by Bill. No coincidence there. And we spoke before, or you mentioned before, about the fact that, I mean, in fact, you didn't say this directly, but what Bill has been notorious for in the past, and owners of his ilk have been famous for, is to bring people in who say yes, and the yes men, and they agree with what they're saying, and they've got a very close connection with those people. I think there's some of that going on. I'm disappointed in Greg, to be honest, because he's a very, very good journalist. He's a massive Evertonian.
So what do you think he hasn't done well?
I think what he hasn't done well is really represented the other side of the coin, as in the avid fan who is attending the game and is paying their money and is getting the level of service. Because look, whether I mentioned the word business before, and we're not here to talk about business because it's football, and football is not just regular business, but on a crude level it is. We're customers, we're paying for the product here, and we're paying for a level of a level of service from the end, as an end user. And I think that, although I'm not in agreement that this club is the worst communicators in the league. I think that we get enough information about the club, but I think the level of poor performance that has gone on behind the scenes, I think we're due more from the club than that. I think the way that the club has threw the end user under the bus over the last 2 or 3 days deserves more of a look under the bonnet. I don't think that you can be as. I think that the statements that Greg's made, or the suggestions that he's made about the fans' behaviour without looking under the bonnet of the other side, I think is really unfair and is too one-sided for me. And that's where I'm disappointed. I think that I think he's made some really valid statements about that from that side of it, from that perspective. I think if he's looking at it from the board's perspective, then I think what he said is fair. But I think a journalist of his pedigree and in the position he's in, I think that the articles and the stuff he's put out deserves a little bit more diligence, and I don't think we've got that.
Are there any at the Echo or generally in the city, in terms of journalists, that have stood up and said, right, we are going to take that look? Nothing at all?
Nothing. I mean, the Echo, more of the signs now, and this is, listen, yourself being on Merseyside, we're we adore the game, we study the game, and we follow the game so avidly that we know a lot about things, and unfortunately, and it is unfortunate sometimes, because you've seen it. Goodison can be a difficult place to play when you're not playing well, because we study the game so much and we recognise when players are not putting that extra shift in or not doing as well as they could do. And at the moment, the Echo is getting more criticism than Lampard's getting. And I was going to come on to that next, by the way.
Yeah,
the Liverpool Echo is getting more. The Echo is getting more criticism as an outlet than Frank Lampard is getting as a professional manager. And that's how poor or how low the paper or the media outlet is astute in this respect. But look, I wanted to take you on to Frank, because listen, let's go below that level, because this is where I've been an Evertonian for a long enough time, and I've seen. I don't think our board has been competent for quite some time, way before Managerial. We've had good people there, no doubt, but have we had professionals who can take that club forward as a professional organisation at this level? I'm not so sure, but what we have been fortunate to have is to have managers at the helm who've literally took control of that situation and have managed everything below board level. And I'm talking Walter Smith, who didn't get the credit that he should have done at that level. You mentioned Joe Royle before, incredible person, unbelievable manager. Howard Kendall, David Moyes. We've had very, very good managers. We've then had a succession, Carlo Ancelotti aside, of managers who are unable to control the poor influence from above. We're now in a position where we've got Frank Lampard. Now, listen, most Evertonians, I'd say 95%, think Frank Lampard is a good guy. He's a football person. He cares about it. Not too dissimilar to Bill Kenwright in that respect. He clearly cares about the job. He wants to do what he can. Is he able to control the club from the level he's at? I don't think so. What's your current, looking at it from the outside, but as a very respected journalist?
First, I just looked at the lineup: Southampton, Pickford, Tarkowski, Godfrey, Cody, Onana, Miolenko, Coleman, Gay. Idrissa Gueye, of course, was with us at Aston Villa. I like Onana. I think he'll go on and have a really good career. Calvert-Lewin, Demarai Gray, Alex Iwobi. The first thing that comes out at that is that is a team. There's a lot of good players. I've obviously got England's number one, Connor Cody. What a great pro. Miolenko's a talent, and Onana's a talent for now and the future. But it doesn't smack to me that recruitment over the years has been very good. That hasn't all been Frank Lampard's problem, by the way. And obviously now financial issues, he's hamstrung in what he can and can't do. I wrote a piece the other day for the Mirror. I've been writing for the Mirror for 15 years now, 14 years, 15 years. And I put in that column about Steven Gerrard and Frank Lampard. We went back many years ago, and it became a myth that great players can't be great managers, and that was because of going back to Bobby Charlton and Bobby Moore didn't become great managers, and so it became a myth in English football that great players can't become great managers, whereas the vast majority of great managers in the game have been great players. 99% of the most successful managers of all time have all been great players. And I was always a little bit like, when Steven Gerrard went to Rangers, I thought, yeah, it makes sense. It's a two-horse race. He can learn, he can make mistakes. I'd heard that from some people that it was Beale that was doing a lot of coaching. Steven's coaching philosophy wasn't fully formed. That's okay. Yeah. Beale's coaching, Gerrard does he's the gaffer, the benign dictator. And Frank was a little bit like that, because he had Jody Morris at Chelsea. I think he's got Ashley Cole now, hasn't he? And a bit behind the scenes.
Clement.
Sorry?
Clement's the first team coach.
Yeah. So, of course, and he was a very good coach, and he's got all of his badges, and he's done very good jobs at very different clubs, and not so good as well when he's been a number one. But I think that the thing that ties them both together when they go to Aston Villa and Everton is you are going in modern fan parlance to Villa and Everton are shit. They're yesterday's men. They're no good. Frank Lampard and Steven Gerrard are the future. They're two legends of English football. And ordinarily, they wouldn't have been anywhere near the Villa or Everton job in the top flight. They would have had to go. Frank did go into the Championship, and we beat Derby when he was Derby manager in the playoff final. Gerrard, you could say, did somewhat of an apprenticeship at Rangers. But neither of them really got to grips with a philosophy, doing the hard yards with a budget that was, perhaps not competitive. Gerrard only had to come in and stop Celtic from winning the league. Frank Lampard could lean on at Derby, which was a difficult job, but get players like Mason Mount that were way better than the level into the football club. So all of a sudden, you've got this massively overinflated coaching resume from both, and they end up managing two of the founder members. Now, I can take a step back and go, if you go into Everton and Villa, you're going to have as much expectation from supporters not to win every game, but to compete and to have respect for the club and to be able to put something together relatively quickly. Not overnight, but relatively quickly. We're going to see your coaching philosophy. And I don't see that.
Yeah, but stand philosophy aside, and this is where I guess I'm not saying I take issue, because he dealt with a lot at the end of last season, Frank Lampard, and he came through. He got survival. You've got to you've got to manage up in these clubs. You're not just managing down. Managing up is, as you know, at the likes of whatever club it is, managing up is different to managing down.
And managing the levels are managing. Managers and coaches often talk about players that can manage the level. Dom Calvert-Lewin 2-3 years ago was being, if Harry Kane's not playing for England, would Calvert-Lewin be a really good stand-in? And Alex Iwobi, I'd put in. Danny Welbeck scored a cracking goal the other day, against Liverpool, and it's no disrespect to Danny Welbeck or his career, but for the most part, you're talking about players who would take them higher up. Who would take Iwobi? Who would take Damari Gray? Who would take Calvert-Lewin? I don't think many teams that are looking to get nick into Europe or just below are going to take them. So all of a sudden, you've got a group of players that Frank Lampard's got to motivate, and he's got to work on one-on-one to make them better. And the thing about Steven Gerrard and Frank Lampard is, absolutely with Gerrard at Villa, he was like, Villa fans would say often he didn't give the supporters a clap when he came off, and it was about Steven presenting an image of the alpha male legend. Where my destiny is Liverpool. I'm here as Aston Villa manager to get a job done, but he never engaged with the fans. Now I think that Frank has taught the talk very well, but you've got to be able to make poor players good and good players great. And I see the team performances, and I see individual performances, and I don't see a massive kick on in how those players have developed. And if you're looking at Brighton with Graham Potter and then Zerbi, is that they have made, they've rejuvenated Danny Welbeck, rejuvenated Alan Lallana. That's two coaches that have gone in and been able to work with individual players that we both thought were probably like Iwobi, like Dom Calvert-Lewin, like Damari Gray, like one or two others, that you could make better, and it hasn't happened.
Well,
and I think that's the worry with Frank, is that at Chelsea, he was the club legend, going home, had a big pot to spend. They conceded a lot of goals, and he got the sack. And at Everton, I haven't seen him managing players to go to the next level further up. Now, he would argue, I've got what I've got. I haven't got a great budget to be able to be going and taking two out, selling two, bringing two in. But this is Everton Football Club. There's twice in my lifetime, and I'm 51, the Dogs of War team and last year, that they've skirted around relegation twice in 51 years that I can remember. So you've got to either deal with that. He knows the barbs are coming, because he says, I don't expect any special treatment. What will be, will be. But I think that's why we're going for Iberian coaches, Spain, Portuguese, more Italians. They do the knowledge for a much, much longer at much shittier clubs. And by the time that they get the opportunity to do something at a big club, they know what they're going to do, how they're going to do it, and they know that they can do it fairly quickly. And Gerrard and Lampard just haven't done that. Neither of them have done it.
Well, you touch on Graham Potter, and I am going to just briefly refer to that because it's a really good point. Graham Potter, what he did well at Brighton, amongst many things, obviously he had that recruitment, and I'm going to give Lampard a pass on that, as you say, as you rightfully say, he hasn't been given that support in getting the right. Apart from Cody, apart from Onana, I think Tarkowski's not a bad signing either, especially on a free. But the likes of, Morpie and McNeil, very poor signings. But just on that one, and before I go back to my other point, a Graham Potter, I'm fairly certain, and from people I know who know him, if he would have been presented with them names, even late in the window, he would have said, I'll take a pass and I'll wait for January. I'll wait for the money because I don't want to blow 20 million, 15 million on these players that I don't think are going to make a difference to this team. I think a stronger, more experienced, or as you point out before, a manager who's sure of himself, who knows what he wants, who's got a philosophy, would have took a pass on those two signings that have cost the club 30, 35 million.
Which 30, 35 million, when Premier League football fans look at it, they're thinking of Man City. They're thinking of Chelsea and thinking £30 million is ballpark for an average player, or even loan fee. If you have a couple of loans with a player. But going back to what I said about the mirror piece is that what I then suggested supplementary was, why didn't, when they came out of the game, St George's Park was not just meant to make England footballers better, it was meant to make our coaches better.
Absolutely.
And all of a sudden, after half a dozen games with Liverpool's under-18s, Gerrard went to... Now, you could say, well, hold on, Stan. If they gave you the Rangers job, or gave Gary the Rangers job, or anybody the Rangers job, instead of being at Kirby with the 18s or the academy with the 18s, you'd take it. But do you know what Graham Potter did? I was on holiday last summer in Crete, and then I interviewed him at Chelsea's training ground, Cobham, about 3 and a bit months ago now. It was before they went to Brighton and they got beat. And it was the start of the bad run, which they are just still on, but just coming out of. And I'm in the swimming pool, and this guy's come over, and I didn't have my glasses on, and he said, right, Stan, it was Graham. So he gets in the pool, and we sit and talk football for an hour and a half. And I asked him everything, just from a geek's perspective. How on earth did you go from the Swedish 4th division to the top, beat Arsenal in the Europa League, and Brighton? And he said, at every step of the way, I had good support from the chairman of the club in Sweden. He said, I had to make sacrifices. I took my family over there on pennies in the 4th division. He said, but the most important thing was I had to learn what to do and learn to make the mistakes in an environment that was appropriate for my skill level at the time. And I don't think that's the case with Frank or Stephen. No. They've got the jobs because they're Premier League legends. That's it.
That was my second one. Is there's been 2 games very recently, and listen, Mashiri, there's comments about the fans and the fans putting pressure on, and actually Frank made a statement himself a few weeks ago. I think he'll look back on and regret about the fans influencing the players to make certain decisions on the pitch. Now, the games I'm referring to are the Wolves game, where it was 1-1. We were 1-0 in front. Wolves got one back. For me, any experienced manager or the likes of Graham Potter, who, as you say, had learned his trade elsewhere, had made his mistakes, would have said, you know what, I'll take the boos from the fans and I'll take the 1-1. I'll tell the players on the pitch by making substitutions that I'm happy with the 1-1, and we'll come away. We'll be 4 points away from Wolves and we'll live to fight another day. He chose not to do that. He put strikers on the pitch. He didn't react from the sidelines. He didn't try and calm his teams down. We subsequently made mistakes, lost the game. Exactly the same against Southampton. We threw strikers on the pitch that didn't really know where they were fitting in. Ellis Sims, who'd only been back at the club for 10 days. Anthony Gordon, who's been drastically out of form, gives away a free kick. their mistakes that a manager or a coach who is experienced and has been in that position at a lower level, at a level, as you say, that's right for his capabilities, would not have made. And that's the unfortunate and sad part of this story at the moment, is that we have got a manager who's incapable of dealing with the pressure, which it's huge pressure now. It's even more because he's not got the ability to manage up that he's capable of dealing with.
And it's going to be an interesting one moving forward, because if you believe in what you read, and there's no reason to not, because it's been briefed obviously from possibly within West Ham that David Moyes is going to be surplus to requirements at West Ham soon. A, what would Evertonians think of that? And B, would you say no, we don't want to go? They say never go back for a number of reasons. He obviously had this conversation. If we'd have had it last season, people would have said absolutely nuts, but that's how quickly football moves. Or do you want to see, even at this stage, the board wake up, smell the coffee and say, first things first is, before we employ the next fella, let's give Evertonians a proper plan as to what we're trying to do? Because I haven't heard that. I've heard at Man United, when they were throwing names at a chalkboard and they had this monster squad of didn't make any sense. They're like, okay, let's get the technical director sorted. Let's shift a couple out. Let's clear the decks. Let's acknowledge our mistakes. Let's communicate with the supporters a little bit more than we've done. And they're in a position now where they're doing quite well. Likewise, Arsenal did the same. Some self-analysis and a little bit of self-deprecation, if you like. Is that, would you or could you expect the current board at Everton Football Club to put a plan before Everton supporters before installing a bloke that is then going to be expected to discharge that plan?
I mean, what I'm going to say first and foremost, and this might upset Evertonians to hear this, I don't think the club or any decent board should be expected to put a plan before the supporters. I think that what they should be expected to do is to have a plan there, and they should have the conviction to execute it. Listen, that's what you should. That's the scrutiny that you should be under at board level. But that's also the conviction you should have to say, do you know what? This is the right thing for the club. I'm an expert in this area. I think the worry from the fans, rightfully so, is that we haven't got the expertise or the depth of knowledge in that area to make those decisions. And to go back to your first question, that's why me as a fan, I would be more favourable. It'd be more favourable to me to look at a manager who is capable of taking that pressure on his shoulders and going, do you know what? I can make decisions at this level. I can set a team up to win games, to draw games, to get us points for this short period of time. And I say short period of time because if we got a David Moyes in, it would have to be, in my eyes, a short-term appointment until we assessed what we've got, that we reevaluated the position of the board. Go on.
Define short-term, though. Would that be 18 months?
Because you couldn't. No, it'd have to be 18 months. Yeah. David Moyes, that's disrespectful to David Moyes to say end of the season. No disrespect to Sam Allardyce, because he got us out of a pickle a few years ago. He's not a Sam Allardyce. He deserves more than that. He's got West Ham into the semi-finals of the Europa League. He's took Everton into he's took Everton into the later stages of Europe. He's a good manager. He's up there for me in the top 10. He's got to be, in terms of the last 10 years. He's proved it with different clubs. So I don't think you could give him that level of disrespect. However, I think, with the comment you made about, not going back, I'm not sure about that. I think for Evertonians, what it is he left us at a period where we'd elevate him to that point. He'd worked hard, but we'd elevate him to a point where he had the chance to then take his career on with us, and he left us in the shit, so to speak. Excuse me, French. And I think there's a degree of that he needs to prove something to us as fans. But going back to a couple of your points that you made very well before, I don't think we've got a board that's capable of backing Frank in the right way and giving him that right level of support. Someone like Kevin Thelwell, who's the director of football, should be wrapping his arms around Frank Lampard right now. He should be taking that pressure off. He should not only be from a recruitment point of view, but it should be from a staffing point of view. He should be bringing staff in there alongside him that can support him in this period, to work with him, with the players he's got. Because if we're on a shoestring from a personnel point of view in terms of bringing players in, there's no reason why, and you'll have seen this in your time, Stan, as a player, that you can't bring certain staff in to support with that situation. That's not happening. And
that was the genius of Sir Alex Ferguson, that he kept on changing his number 2, Steve McLaren, Carlos Queiroz,
yeah, of course.
Mickey, yeah, exactly. So again, if you can't, you hit the nail on the head there. If you can't bring in players, you can bring in new voices and new training methods that get players. And the other thing that Kevin, I would hope that he would have done, and I would hope somebody from the board would have done, is if they are going to stick with him, and this undoubtedly happened with Mikel Arteta at Arsenal, is that when you're going through a bad spell, but you say, we believe in you, we believe you've got the ability, we believe that we have a vision for Frank Lampard to take us forward, which is looking unlikely, it has to be said at the minute. But if that's what the board decide, then it should be at some stage behind the scenes, whether it be Finch Farm, you get the technical staff together, you get the academy coaches together, you get the board of directors, somebody speaking on behalf of the club and saying he's going nowhere, because players, as we know, have a lot of power now, and they just don't, like Chelsea's problem is going to be. I was talking the other day to somebody and they're saying
convincing those players that Graham Potter is going nowhere.
They get a whiff of that Potter's under a bit of trouble, and then the little chatterboxes start in the dressing room, and then before you know it, he's gone, and it's like, great, we're getting a new guy in next week. And yes, it worked for Chelsea under Roman Abramovich, but not every club has that kind of money, or even Bowley's money. But I think if behind the scenes at Finch Farm there's get everybody together, have a meeting, and somebody from board level says, this guy's going nowhere, you've got to pull your tripe out and you've got to want to become better players, is that will give him a little bit more leeway and a bit more armoury. But unfortunately in football, it often boils down, even with best laid plans and having 5-year plans or 3-year plans and having even good recruitment, that results can go wrong. We've seen that with West Ham doing well in Europe. Their owners will be looking at it and going, we want to be qualifying for Europe every season. Maybe David now is not going to be the guy to take us forward. But the interesting thing with all the board stuff going on, yes, he knows the club. Yes, he knows a lot of the characters that are at the club, particularly Bill. He's worked for Bill before. Would he sit back and wait for something, or would he be tempted to go back if Everton said, look, we're going to get Frank, thanks, we've given you a go here. Would they be likely to go back to David Moyes? And would David Moyes say, I've just gone from West Ham where, yeah, the results were poor, but I had a really good squad to work with. Would he run back into Everton, or would he wait? That would be an interesting one as well.
Absolutely. There are so many permutations, variables going on there as well. And you know, I'm making the assumption there, as you've rightly said, that David Moyes would jump at the chance of coming back. That may not necessarily be the case. But look, Stan, I've just looked down. I was like, can't believe we've been on for an hour. I could talk football all day with you, mate, honestly. And listen, just on behalf of Evertonians, you know, I appreciate the respect you've given the club, certainly over the last hour and throughout your whole time as a journalist. And you know, we don't get that level of respect sometimes from Copites. I'll call you that because you were there, you were across the bar, you played for that team.
It's a great club, but more importantly than being a great club, it's a great institution. And when you look at great institutions, they should be setting the tone for Championship clubs, League One clubs, because if you've got nothing to look forward and up to at the top of the pyramid, then that's why we have so many clubs and so many rogue owners. And I'm not necessarily saying that's the case. We all know about the Mashiri situation and what's gone on, and Ukraine and Russia crashed a lot of things, not just in football, but beyond. But I think that if Everton are going to move forward, I think that the first thing to do is for Bill to just say, should I still be doing this? What's my track record? And then take a step back. Somebody younger, more dynamic with a vision that then comes out and says, like, we'll make changes to the board, but it'll come at the pace. I need to see what talent there is here within the building.
Yeah.
And give Evertonians, I know what you said, and I agree with you, that businesses should, you don't go to Tesco's and you don't get the CEO saying this is what our business plan is. You just expect Tesco's to deliver good groceries and on time as the end user, whether you go in store or whether you have it delivered. But I think in this case, because the perception is that Everton have lurched from one blind alley to another, that a really good, young, dynamic CEO headhunted from a club that was, proactive on the up, that then you say, Everton Football Club is looking forward to getting into this stadium at this end point. And between now and then, we are going to do things with some clarity, with some transparency. We're going to be a club of all the talents, and the coach and the technical staff will decide the pathway where the football club the on-pitch goes. And if they do that, it can turn really quickly. Man United was a basket case, and people say it's Man United. There's no reason why Everton can't get all of the backroom staff right. And then, I think that with the Bill thing, I can see why there'd be probably an older generation that goes to Everton and goes, you know what, Stan, I completely disagree with that. Bill's been here. I have a pint with him in the local after the game, and I love him to bits, and he tells me the old tales. Sometimes it's just...
You'll do well to find them now, Stan.
Sometimes you've got to take a look and say, can I do any more? And I don't think Bill Kenwright can do any more at Everton. And he'll give him President Emeritus what Doug Ellis got at Villa all those years, and move on. Let him still come to the games and still be around, but don't let him influence the direction of Everton Football Club. And if they can do that, and if they can do that with somebody that Evertonians can get behind, I think that even this late stage in the day, that Everton can move forward, get into the stadium, and be a really competitive football team again.
I mean, without dragging this on too much, because I know you've got to sleep as well tonight, Stan. We've actually got a CEO, and that's the really sad, remarkable bit about it. I mean, our CEO's getting apparently put in headlocks, so she's struggling to run the club for that reason. Denise, listen, and look, the whole Denise, just before I let you in, the Denise Barrett Baxendale appointment alone says so much about the unfortunate look. And I don't want this to become, or to be perceived to be, a disrespect for women, by the way. Denise Barrett Baxendale done a terrific job with the community. She's a fantastic woman. She's a good businesswoman, and everything that goes with it. But the type of personality and person that was required in that position, given the dynamic of Bill Kenwright, of the owner, of how powerful the owner is, as any owner is in that position, but the long-standing position that Bill Kenwright has, and all the other stuff that's gone on, Denise Barrett Baxendale's been thrown under the bus as much as the fans have, to some extent.
Well,
and that,
when she came in, and again, watching Everton from the outside, and you'll find tweets somewhere about me saying Denise is, when I'm talking to Evertonians on Twitter and answering questions, she came across as strong, savvy, was hand on the tiller and moving the club safely into new waters. So I don't dispute that is who she is. When I said a sort of leadership figure and bringing in somebody more dynamic, I'm talking about a club chairman, somebody that is incredibly perceptive in terms of putting their arm around people, being a person of the talents, being somebody that goes, our CEO is going to talk to supporters at AGMs and supporters groups on a regular basis, because we've done that poorly in recent years. And I think that what you get with Bill is what you get with a lot of old school chairmen and owners, that they're like, you should be happy for me to be here because I'm one of you. And I keep telling you, for as long as I keep telling you that I'm one of you, that should give you comfort. And it's the decisions that you make in the boardroom, sometimes very tough, sometimes very cruel, or you empower somebody. Denise, we're giving you more ability to do this in this part of the football club. That's what makes a successful football club. And I don't see that with Bill, because I think that Bill will now hold on for as long as Bill can. And I think that is the wrong thing to do for Everton Football Club moving forward. Denise may well with a new chairman that's perhaps a little bit younger and a bit more savvy and understanding of the football industry, Denise might fly. Denise may, you know, it may, because of the headlock thing that people say that's her bridges built. I'd be a little bit reluctant to do that, because I think you've got to look at somebody's track record as a CEO with a chairman and the board structure as it is at Everton. And that's why Manchester United, for example, or Arsenal, when they've made changes, they haven't got rid of everybody. They've got rid of 2 or 3 that weren't functioning properly. And then lo and behold, the CEO or moving into a different position has shown a different side to them, and they can work within the structure. So I definitely didn't get anything from Evertonians for the first, I don't know, couple of years, that Denise was doing some really good stuff, that there was communication from the club were coming on time to address different issues about whatever it was. And it might be the case that she might be sitting there going, for as long as Bill's here, I'm not my ceiling. And that often is the case. So I'd be reluctant to go down chuck the baby out with the bathwater. But I think that the issue and the problem is Bill hanging on needs a new impetus, needs a new person to come in and say, let's take Everton properly into the 21st. If nothing else, you just look at the stadium, which is over the horizon, and somebody to come in that says, what's happened before has happened. We're now going to take Everton Football Club firmly into the 21st century. And that's going to be from board level to recruitment to being a club of the talents. We'll be poaching people before they go to Man United, before they go across the park. And I think that if Everton do that with a new figure, man, woman, doesn't matter, somebody that is football savvy, I think the club can move forward. And I hope they move forward, because as there was it say about Yorkshire cricket, a healthy Yorkshire cricket is, I hate cricket. A healthy Yorkshire cricket is healthy for English cricket. And I think it's the same. Sure. Healthy top flight English football has a very healthy Everton in it.
Love that as a finishing piece. I was about to go back into the board members there and certain board members, but look at it. I think it's we would literally be here all night. I do want to actually touch on. In fact, I'm going to go back. Grant Ingles, and I'm not expecting you to know in-depth information about Grant Ingles. I am going to stand up for the information I know and support him to some extent. I think he's one of those board members who has been thrown under the bus, so to speak, and has been thrown in that you know, in that pit of negativity. He's actually really stood up for the club over the last 12 to 24 months in a very difficult position as CFO, given the financial fair play mess that we've been in. And I think there's been an unfair criticism, in my opinion, of him. I don't know everything. I'm not going to say that I do, and someone will criticise on Twitter and say, Judgy, he's done this and he's done that. But for me, he's a person, he's the type of appointments that we do need on the boards, and the type of person that we do need to get behind.
I think that when you're looking at those meetings around a boardroom, around a table in a boardroom, is that there will be good people there that may be in a different environment show you what they're made of. And that is the problem of, and that's why I went back right the way back early when we started the podcast about, it's very easy for football fans to say, tar everybody with the same brush.
Yeah, sack the balls.
It's been something for years. We all do it. It's something we can get behind. It's kind of like we've done the managers, we've done the players underperforming. Let's turn our ire on the people that make decisions, and I get it. But in a board of directors of 8 or 6 or 10, there are going to be usually 2 or 3 that are excellent but keep their heads down, because they either speak up and go and maybe not get the job again. So they have to tread that path very carefully. And there's usually 2 or 3 that just want to go off in directions that don't suit the club. But I think that if you've got the totem and the head of the club, the visible head of the club, and I know that Denise as CEO is that, but effectively when you ask most people who's Everton, they'll say. So I think if Bill were to get to the end of the season and say, it's probably prudent now. It's time to go. I'm going to leave it to a dynamic 50-year-old that's worked at Ajax or worked at, and I know that they've had people, technical directors from abroad. I'm talking about
Marcel Brands.
Yeah, Marcel.
You're talking about the chairman, aren't you? Talking about a football business who knows the game. And
that understands the game, understands the football business model of today, that will get a dynamic board of directors that make decisions and that are accountable for those decisions, that do the basics very well, communicate with supporters, communicate their performance indicators to the technical staff, the football board, and then that filters down to the head coach or the manager, and then that filters down to the team. If Everton can do that at the end of this season, there's a load to look forward to. If Bill hangs on and hangs on and hangs on, then it just is going to get toxic, and it's going to get toxic very quickly, because I think that Evertonians are at a place now where we all get together and the calls to action will be louder, makes it more difficult then for players and managers to be able to operate, despite giving the team support. I'm aware that any club, Villa fans did it when they wanted the board out, and then when they wanted owners out, they still went and supported the team. But still, with an air of uncertainty over things, it becomes very difficult. So I think that one very good thing that everybody could get behind, whether it be Frank, whether it be David Moyes, whether it be the players, whether it be supporters, whether it be other board directors, Bill being the sacrificial lamb could start a real positive process. So for me, it begins and ends with Bill, as I said at the beginning of the conversation.
No, I honestly couldn't agree with any more, Stan. Despite all the different directions you've gone in there, and the incredibly in-depth conversations you've had, I thoroughly enjoyed it, Stan. Honestly, and I really love to have you on again, and hopefully next time we have you on, we're talking about some changes, and we're talking about positive changes, and I'm happy for you at Villa going in the right direction under Unai Emery. Sorry, it looks like.
Absolutely. Let's just hope that the oldest top flight, the longest played fixture in the top flight continues for many years to come, and hopefully sees us both on some sunny day before we're very old, or before, in my case, shuffle from. We'll see us challenging not just towards the top of the pile, but in Europe again. Europe with Villa and Everton, and more different colours and sizes of clubs that have done their apprenticeship over many years would be absolutely fantastic. But to all Evertonians, up the Villa. Look forward to seeing you at a game soon, and I wish everybody all the very best.
Thank you again for joining us on Across the Park podcast, Dan Collymore. Appreciate it.
See you later.
Cheers, mate.